Hi, my name is Josh and welcome to my mini course, How to Share the Gospel Intentionally. Today we're going to talk about how do we have spiritual conversations. Often when I talk to people about sharing the gospel with their neighbors, friends, or coworkers, this is one of the hardest things to do. How do you transition from talking about basketball? How do you transition talking about fishing or work into talking about God? And oftentimes this is where people kind of feel like it's an obstacle to overcome. And one of the things that I've realized is when we do this, there's many different ways to do this. And sometimes all we're doing is planting a little seed to see if they're even interested in talking about the things of God. One of the things I like to do is if I'm in a neighborhood with friends and they comment on how beautiful it is today, I'll make a comment of something like, man, yeah, God did such a good job of painting a portrait for us to look at this afternoon. And I just leave it like that and see what they say. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, he really did. Other times they'll look at me confused. And what I'm doing is I'm testing the waters. I'm just seeing, are they open to having that conversation? Another thing that is easy and good to do is when you're talking with a coworker and they're talking about the skill or this thing they're passionate about, you could be like, man, that is so awesome that God has wired you that way. And I'm so excited to see how God uses this passion in your life. And by just throwing that out there, you've planted a seed for one, and two, you already open up the conversation about God. Another way to do this is when you're talking with a friend and they're telling you about a problem they're having. When they're done sharing and you're done listening, you just look at them and say, hey, can I pray for you about this right now? And just ask God to intervene in your situation, or to fight for you at work or with your spouse or whatever is going on. And 9 out of 10 times people are going to say, I would love for you to pray for that. And what you just did in those moments with those little things is you just introduced them to God in the context of their life story. And you gave them a different picture that they hadn't seen before. And the more you do this, the easier it becomes. And oftentimes you might be thinking, oh, they're going to reject this. They're not going to like this. They have no interest or grid for God. But the reality is most people have no grid for God because nobody has actually really introduced them to God. And one of the things that the prophet Jeremiah spoke of in Jeremiah 29 is he talks about when you seek me with all your heart, you will find me. So oftentimes when I talk to people, I also give them, like, this is where I give a friend of mine a challenge when they say, I've seen no evidence for God in my life. I say, well, here's what I want you to do for the next 30 days. I want you to commit to every day just asking one question. Say, God, would you reveal yourself to me? God, would you show me that you are real? And then every week I'd ask them, are you doing that? And if they say no, so then how can God reveal himself to you if you're not asking him to? And then if he is, then sit with them and say, have you noticed any difference in your life? And so what you're doing, especially if they're an atheist or they don't really believe in the existence of God, or they believe that God created everything, but he's distant, you've just created an opportunity for the next 30 days for God to be intentionally working in their life in a way they weren't expecting. And so these are good things to say too when people make comments like that. Another thing to do is with friends and others, I like to say, hey, I just kind of want to get a grid for what your spiritual beliefs are. Could I ask you like 5 questions? And you can tell them, I'm not going, in this point, I'm just listening. I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm not going to tell you whether you're right or wrong. I'm not even going to go there. I just want to hear. And then after you've asked them those questions, you then can ask them others. And so I'll have a list of a couple questions you can ask. And they're just simple questions like, do you even believe in God? And if you do believe in God, what does he expect of you? And then another question to ask is, do you think God can be known, or how would you describe God? See, these are just simple questions, and it gives you an idea of where they're even at on this scale of 1, they have no clue who God is. 10, they have a pretty good clue, but something hasn't clicked for them yet because they haven't yet given their life to Jesus. So another question to ask them is, do they even believe in heaven? And then ask them, do you believe that there's multiple ways to get to heaven, or there's just one way? And if so, could you describe what that is? And then you could follow those up with other questions like, what has led you to believe that? And then you can ask other questions regarding that. And oftentimes when you start asking questions, you start helping people, one, realize that, I don't really have good answers for this. And then you could say, hey, can I share with you my own story? Because I used to think a lot like you. Or, man, that is so interesting. I've never thought of things like that. But this is what I have seen, and this is why I believe this. And it gives opportunities for you to share Jesus. When we begin transitioning from just talking about the weather, talking about basketball, baseball, work, whatever it is, to introducing the things of God, we begin planting seeds and we begin setting ourselves up to have a conversation next week or tomorrow or the following month with that person. You'll be surprised. They'll come back to you and say, I've been pondering all week if God actually created me, because you threw that out there. You said, yeah, it's so awesome how God wired you and created you to be so passionate for children, or be so generous, whatever it is. And so you'll find when you plant these seeds and you begin praying intentionally for your neighbors, it will open the doors for you to share the gospel. So I want to encourage you, if you like these videos, subscribe, and then make comments and share these with others. Bless you guys.